Hello, so I'm going to be reading Chapter 2 of Blood and Genetics. Sir, the DNA results have come through. I think you ought to see this. Iverson peered over the scientist's shoulder. What is it? I'm not a biologist, Holt. This is why I hire you. Colleen Holt pierced lips. Well, you see, his Y-gene is perfectly normal. Absolutely nothing strange about it, but his X gene, it's not human, sir. It's not that the gene is just mutated. It just isn't human at all. What do you mean, Holt? It has to be human. It wouldn't be possible for an animal to mate with a human. That's the thing, sir. It's not animal DNA either. At least no animal that we have here on Earth. What are you suggesting, Holt? Sir, we've been seeing signs of activity out in the far reaches of the solar system. I've seen the radio chatter pick up. That's confidential, Holt. You shouldn't be talking about it so openly. No, sir, but perhaps those signs of activity might be the reason for the strand of DNA. My office, Holt. Now. Colleen followed Iverson to his office, and he shut the door behind him. So, about the possible chatter that we picked up, you think? I think that they're signs of extraterrestrial life forms, yes. Are you familiar with the dark forest theory? No. Essentially, it states that perhaps intelligent life is out there, but it also suggests that all of that life out there, including us, is all like a dark forest, teeming with soldiers. You don't dare call out in case someone who hears you is an enemy, and if you hear something yourself, you don't risk that. It's an enemy rather than an ally. You shoot first. Exactly. So we're all soldiers in a dark forest just hoping to survive, but you know what we've been doing ever since we figured out how to get things into space? We've been sending out signals. We've essentially been the soldier in the forest who's been screaming nonstop. You think someone's heard us? Yes, Colleen smiled slightly. But, well, maybe the person who heard us has night vision goggles. What are you saying? I'm saying that maybe they decided to look before shooting. Maybe they sent out a scout to assess our danger level. What do you think they decide? Colleen sighed. Well, if they look too far into our history, they'd see nuclear warfares in World War II and World War III. They'd see countless instances of humanity being pretty horrible. But then, we don't know anything about extraterrestrial species. They might look on those things in horror, or they might think that it's a good sign of a strong potential ally. And you think Kagane's mother might have been one of those potential extraterrestrials? I think it's a valid option, but it's not necessarily our only option. We only have one case of this happening, and that's Keith. If we had a wider database spread over several specimens, perhaps we could find out more, but as it is, there are no signs of mutation of human DNA or any instances of possible radiation poisoning. His DNA simply isn't human. So you're saying that Kagane's father and another species? No, not another species. If they were another species, then it wouldn't be possible to have a child who could reproduce, which, according to Keith's genetic code, is entirely an option for him. Whatever Keith's mother was, she was of our species. Strange, isn't it, to think that a creature not even from our own planet shares a closer genetic code than any other species on our homeworld. It's fascinating, honestly, and scientifically, Holt, focus. Yes, sir, sorry. Normally I work with plants, which is just fine, but this... Yes, I consider bringing your husband in on this, but with the approaching launch of the Kerberos mission, I didn't want to distract him. Colleen hesitated. Sir, this information, if there really are intelligent extraterrestrials out there, it could be a game changer. We don't know how far from Earth they might be at this point in time, and now that they might possibly know about us, it might be wise for us to stop broadcasting our presence. It might be best if we become the stealthiest soldier in the forest until we find out more. You want to delay the mission? Yes, sir. I can't do that. I don't have the authority. Well, please discuss it with Sandez. Of course, before we make giant fools of ourselves, we need to come to more conclusive evidence. What do you mean? Colleen shrugged. Keith's birth record should clear things up. You have access to those? Yes. Iverson logged into his computer and searched the database for Keith's file. He found it, opened it, and frowned. His mother isn't listed. At all. We have his father, died in a fire a few years back, but he doesn't have a mother listed, which is strange. It's perfectly normal not to have a father listed, but to not know who the mother is. How is that even possible? Colleen demanded. She had to give birth to him. He wasn't born in a hospital. In fact, he wasn't even registered until he was a year or two old. His mother may as well be a ghost. His father listed her as away. He didn't say where she went, only that she is away. Do you think that she may have run out on them? Or maybe neither of their parents knew, so he wanted to keep her identity a secret? Maybe, but he was a fully grown adult at the time, and according to Akira Kagane's records, Iverson tapped the screen. Both of his parents were dead before Keith was even born. Her parents, then, Colleen suggested. Perhaps she was a minor, which would explain why he certainly wasn't going to tell the law who the mother was. Perhaps, but the man was an upstanding citizen by all means. Fireman, did his part, community service, no accounts of any former incidents or such thing. He was a bit of a recluse, too, lived out in the middle of the desert. Colleen tapped her chin thoughtfully. Look at all the instances surrounding Keith's birth. Iverson clicked away on his computer. Let's see. There was a meteor, but nothing at the crash site, and there were some explosions in the desert with twisted hunks of metal on the scene, at the scene, which led us to believe that they were caused by some poor desert animal wandering on a missed landmine from World War III. Meteor, huh? Iverson pushed his chair away from his computer a bit to look Colleen in the eye. Are you suggesting that it might have been an extraterrestrial spacecraft? I know that the desert sands cover objects quickly, but how soon do you typically get a meteor that's this close after its crash site? A couple of hours maximum. It was a still night, too. Were there any tracks? Iverson's brow furrowed. I don't remember. He clicked on his computer a few more times until the photos of the area. Until he found the photos of the area. It looks like there might be a few spots where a blown-over footprint could have been, but we don't know for sure. Well, no, we don't really have a way of knowing for sure, but evidence suggests the meteor was a UFO. The alien maybe, I don't know, drove it away from the crash site. She met Akira Kagane, and then they had a child, which is Keith, and then what, she left? Colleen frowned. That's the part that doesn't make any sense. Even if she never showed up in public with Akira, she wouldn't abandon her child after her mate's death. We don't know much about these aliens, but if one was willing to reproduce with a human, she must have had a sentimental reason for it. There was no biological reason to mate with a human due to their planetary differences, so it doesn't fit in that she just abandoned her family. Should I report our findings to standards? No. We still don't have a definite proof that this simply isn't a gene that we haven't seen before. We just don't know enough about Keith's mother to prove that she is an extraterrestrial, besides circumstantial evidence. I'm going home now. I can't leave Katie alone for much longer. We'll continue this tomorrow, okay? Don't find anything without me. How are we even supposed to find anything out? That's simple enough, Colleen smiled. We asked Keith. Lance's voice sounded softly in the quiet library. Griffin, we need to talk to you. Griffin turned to face Hunk and Lance. Hey, what do you need? Lance put his hands on his hips. You need to fess up about that video. It wasn't about embarrassing Keith, was it? Griffin shifted, glancing away from them. What do you mean? You went straight to Iverson, but Keith didn't even get in trouble, even though you had video evidence that he attacked you. Not to mention that I haven't seen that video anywhere on the internet, so why did you even take it? Griffin sighed. Look, remember when Keith attacked me in the simulator room? Lance snorted. How could I forget? Right, well, when he did, he changed, okay? Yeah, he went from arrogant puffball who got stuck running drills in the simulators to a murderous ball of rage. I could see that straight from Pride to Wrath. And that's not what I mean. I mean like he physically changed. His eyes, the white part, turned yellow, and his irises, Griffin shuddered. You know how snakes' irises are? Where their pupils are tiny slits? It was like that. Lance and Hunk glanced at each other. Okay, Lance said nervously. You know, Keith hit you with that lunch tray pretty hard. It makes sense that your memories are out of whack. No pun intended. I'm not suffering from a concussion, Griffin shouted. A group of nearby students jumped and stared at him, as did the librarian. He waved a hand. Sorry. They went back to their own conversation, and he leaned towards Hunk and Lance, lowering his voice to a whisper. Look, I'm not crazy or hallucinating. If you don't believe me, you try. Antagonize Keith and see it for yourself. Are you sure that you're not crazy? Lance questioned in an equally soft tone. I'm not provoking Keith. Why, if you're right, there's nothing to fear, right? He can still pack a punch. That guy's a walking time bomb with a mullet. I'm not messing with him. Yeah, no thanks, Hunk echoed. Griffin laughed incourteously. Seriously? Even when you don't believe that he's some kind of super freak, you're scared of Kagane? Excuse me, Griffin. There's this tiny little detail that you may or may not have not noticed. I don't know, because, it can be kind of hard to miss. Oh, yeah, that kid is a psychopath. He's got more issues than a tad-boiled Hollywood couple, and he may or may not have knocked any sense that you had out of you. That kid is bad news. I'm not getting near him if I can help it. The thump created by someone dropping books on the ground sounded, and footsteps pounded past them, a whoosh of air ruffling their hair and uniforms. The library door opened and slammed shut, and through the window of the door, Griffin could see Keith running down the hallway and pushing past people. He clapped Lance on the shoulder. Congratulations on surviving Keith after making all those comments. I'm surprised that you didn't get a library book to the back of the head. Lance shrugged uneasily, glancing at the door. Eavesdroppers never hear anything good about themselves. The librarian stalked her way over to the stack of books that Keith had dropped, picking them up gingerly. What happened? Keith. She frowned. He's normally so careful with his books. Is something bothering him? Lance shrugged guiltily. Maybe. He's been pretty angry lately. Excuse us. He and Hunk fled the library, Griffin hot on their heels. Go find him, Griffin told them triumphantly as they reached the boys' bathroom. I bet his eyes are nuts right now. Go on, go find him. Prove me right. Lance stopped in his tracks. Griffin, unlike you, I don't have a death wish. I'm not going to track down and upset Keith, even if it's your fault he's upset, right? Griffin asked in a strange whisper. I don't know, Lance. Those were some pretty harsh words. You should go apologize to him, look him dead in the eye, and if he doesn't want to be called a psychopath, then he shouldn't act like one. Besides, it's none of his business what I say to my friends or to you, Griffin. Cold. I want to know how he heard you, Hunk interjected. I could barely hear you, and I was only a few feet away. He was definitely further. Why didn't you ask Griffin that question since he apparently knows all about Keith? Lance squinted at Griffin. Wait, didn't you go to school with him before? Yeah, sure, but we didn't talk. He just sat in the corner and did his own thing. He was just the emo kid. He didn't have any friends as far as I could tell. No one even talked to him, and honestly, I don't think I ever heard him talk in class. He was just there, discipline issues or something like that. So what I'm hearing is that he was always a psychotic freak. Griffin shrugged, never did his homework, rarely answered any questions in class. He's older than us, but I think he failed a year. Don't know why, he always did fine on quizzes and tests. He got here by stealing Takashi Shirogane car. And that got him in? I guess Shirogane liked his style. So, head case, and you wanted me to provoke him. Why? He'd probably just steal another car and run me over. Yeah, whatever. The half-hour warning for curfew rang, and they headed towards the dorming area. Jeez, Lance grumbled, pushing his hands into his pockets. Can't even have a conversation with your friend around here. Keith leaned his head against the bathroom door, sitting with his back to the door, and his knees close to his chest, one fist wrapped around his dark bangs, the other in his mouth to keep him from making any noise. If he doesn't want to be called a psychopath, then he shouldn't act like one. Super freak, head case, just the emo kid, psychotic freak, discipline issues, bad news, walking time bomb. Keith buried his head in his arms, shoulders shaking. You've heard it before, it's nothing new. Just coming from different people. He whispered, you knew they thought you were weird. You knew. Flight groups are supposed to be family. Sure, I told him that when he talked about the Kerberos mission. They had your back. They were everything. Yeah, well, what do you know about family? He asked himself, voice cracking. He heard someone striding towards the bathroom door, and he staggered to his feet. He couldn't let anyone see him like this. Keith glanced at the window and clambered out, thanking his lucky stars that the library was on the first floor. He walked along the outside until he hit the dorms, and counted the windows before shimmying up one of the cables outside of the building and slipping in through his window, just before curfew bell rang. The garrison-issued computer on his desk buzzed with an unread message from Shiro. He glanced at the screen, then dismissed them all, powering off the computer, and shutting the window, locking it firmly. After performing a routine check to make sure none of his few belongings had gone missing, he turned off the lights and laid down on his bed, staring at the ceiling. Night, Dad, he whispered to the air around him. He rolled so that he was facing the door, and his breathing slowed down to a steady, even pace. Outside, the desert sky was filled with stars, but Keith wasn't awake to see them.